Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk is in Rome Thursday for a diplomatic visit that will see the Polish leader meet Pope Leo XIV at the Vatican before holding talks with his Italian counterpart, Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. The meetings are taking place as tensions rise between Washington and several European allies over security, Iran, and the future American military presence in Europe. And joining us now to discuss it is Renata Mieńkowska-Norkiene, political scientist from the University of Warsaw. Good to have you with us again. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So, Prime Minister Donald Tusk and Giorgia Meloni, these are two leaders from quite different political backgrounds and camps. How are they coming together? It seems that defense and security, is that the common denominator here?
Yeah, well, at first sight, indeed, we might say they come from different camps politically. However, I wouldn't look at this that way, because it's not the first time when we can expect some kind of like-minded concepts. First and foremost, Donald Tusk and Giorgia Meloni, they have already cooperated on numerous matters on European level, like, for example, reforms of ETS systems. And there were also quite many common, I would say, initiatives which were informal, let's be honest, because it's always been a sort of informal talks or talks really out of public interest, but it was about also making Europe a little bit more competitive and a little bit less regulative. So there are things which do connect the Polish Prime Minister and also Giorgia Meloni. And now most probably they will be talking about defense and security, as you properly mentioned, but I'm more than sure that they will also be talking about the US and its role in Europe, and generally speaking in, well, protecting or supporting Europe in any risky situation, let's put it that way, if there is such, because we know that Donald Trump sends signals which might be, well, contradicting to each other depending on the day and on the development of the situation in the Strait of Hormuz and the situation in the Middle East. Also in Ukraine to some extent, because suddenly Donald Trump has become also fond of what Zelensky has been doing. So well, most probably there will be talks about the US and its role, and also about the EU multi-annual financial framework, where the question of defense, but also those usually European aspects like, you know, agricultural policy, like regional policy and so on, they will be at least mentioned during this meeting. But the US is significant because then Marco Rubio is coming to Italy, and most probably Meloni will try to somehow connect these aspects and know at least whether she, along with Donald Tusk, or at least Italy along with Poland, could be somehow a bridge to the United States from the European Union.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I want to ask about that just now, because we've seen these I suppose we can call them transatlantic ripples, cracks, however you want to call them that, but it is not what it once was, specifically with Donald Trump now pulling out 5,000 troops from Germany. We don't know where they'll be posted, but also threatening that he might do the same for Italy as well. Now, Italy hosts 13,000 U.S. servicemen in key locations. Let me just share now with you and our audience just a quick clip from Giorgia Meloni, what she thinks about this kind of decision if Trump were to make it. Let's roll that now.
We know that for some time now, the United States has, shall we say, been discussing a withdrawal from Europe, which is why I believe we must strengthen our security and, let's say, develop our capacity to respond. I would like to make it clear, Italy has always honored its commitments. Italy has honored every commitment it has undertaken. It has never shied away, especially within NATO. Even when our direct interests were not at stake, we stepped up.
I think also she said that in another place where she does not agree that those U.S. troops should be removed from Italy. So having said that, what do you think on that meeting now with Tusk? As you said, it could be a bridge. What's expected between that meeting with Rubio? Will he smooth things over with her? Will that relationship, let's say, be patched up?
Yes, well, I think that Rubio has, as an American, of course, leverage vis-a-vis Giorgia Meloni, because obviously we know that the United States have, as Donald Trump likes saying, cards in their hands. And I'm afraid that Meloni may not get exactly what she wants from the very beginning till the very end. Nevertheless, I would like to mention and make it clear that American presence in Europe, military presence, meaning military bases and also soldiers, is important also for the US. I mean, it's not only us that would love to have Americans here. It's also very important to know what is going on here, to have direct contact with military services in those countries where the US soldiers are. And I would say that therefore Meloni can achieve at least not suppressing those soldiers from the from Italy. However, of course, a lot is dependent on Trump. I think that Rubio's mission is to make a sort of a truce with the Pope on behalf of Donald Trump, who isn't, let's say, the best person to have direct talks with the Pope, it seems. While with Meloni, Rubio will probably talk toughly, but nevertheless, I think that the things which can be bargained here from the side of Italy, Italy can devote to some extent. I'm not sure what it can be, but it can probably be some kind of commitment for the future. And also some kind of, I don't know, Meloni will just try to please Trump and somehow appease him. While with Rubio, she will be most probably quite honest about what's at stake if the US suppresses their soldiers from Italy, as it intends to do with Germany. But I also want to underline that it's not yet really 100% sure that these soldiers will be suppressed from Europe. Maybe they will be shifted to Poland. Maybe they will be put somewhere else. We don't know that, actually, because it's all dependent on Trump. And as we know, Trump may change his mind anytime soon. So I think she may achieve something from those talks, because Rubio's mission is also to milder a little bit this pretty tense situation in Italy, also with the Pope and also with the European Union as such, because all eyes are now on Meloni and Rubio in Europe, because we all expect that she will be the one to come back to talks with Donald Trump and and be a kind of, at least a person to be able to talk to Trump as she used to do before Trump said he didn't like her. But this may obviously change too.
Yeah, and I think that's also the interesting dynamic, isn't it, as well? And we've seen also her grow closer with the German chancellor, now hosting also Donald Tusk. I know that
Exactly.
President Nawrocki was also recently in Italy, so an interesting one we'll have to observe. You mentioned the Pope there. Let me ask you quickly there as well, because Prime Minister Tusk also has an audience with the Pope. There's been that spat recently between the Vatican and Donald Trump in the White House. How, let's say, if anything, I mean, the Pope himself, the role, is he becoming more, let's say, of, let's say, no, not a spokesperson, but is he being more active now, perhaps, given what's happened in Iran and the Middle East than before? How do you see this dynamic unfold?
Yes, I think the Pope, whether he wanted it or not, he has become a significant figure in these international talks about what has been going on in the Middle East and whether it should be quicker or later, let's say, solved. We all wished it was obviously sooner. Nevertheless, it was more probably because of this fight or quarrel with Donald Trump. And Rubio has a mission today to talk to the Pope and try to get his, let's say, positive attitude back. Where the Pope has more cards probably than Meloni in this case, because Pope does not depend on the US. You know, Pope is not in a direct threat of Russia or Iran or whoever else. So yes, he might try to use his situation, his position, and this lack of leverage over him as regards the United States. And you know, for the United States and for Donald Trump, the Pope is also significant, because Donald Trump's surroundings, it's people who are highly religious, extremely conservative, and there are plenty of environments, Catholic environments, who are angry with Trump for this quarrel with the Pope. And now I think Rubio is trying to also restore this good reputation, let's say, of Donald Trump and the US top people in the government as those who do respect, you know, this religious aspect and the Pope as a head of the Catholic Church. So yes, I think neither J.D. Vance nor Donald Trump himself could actually be efficient here, while Marco Rubio could be the one who might come back to the US with this message sent to the voters that, yes, we made it. I mean, the Pope is on our side. We are like-minded and so on and so forth. You name it, because, of course, he will somehow send a proper message that will be comfortable for them in the United States. But yes, this is very important, because the US government is very cautious about votes of Catholics and votes of those religious people in the United States who have voted for Donald Trump, but now they might have changed their minds because of his fight with the Pope. Mm-hmm. So yes, I think the Pope has become more significant than ever before, I would say, as regards this Donald Trump's term now, in particular, since there are two wars, and we know that the Pope opts in both cases for their ending and for their, I would say, ending which would bring actual peace and not only short-term truce.
All right, so it'll be temporal matters, spiritual matters, political matters, all those in Rome happening over the next few days.
Yes,
Thanks
exactly.
so much.
And this type of diplomacy, which depends on the mood of one person, well, right. That's the time we are in.
Yeah, indeed. So look, thanks for all that, the insight, the analysis, always appreciated. Renata Mieńkowska-Norkiene there. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but stay right here on TVP World for more news and commentary. Goodbye.